section 2.1 is all about what led to European exploration. There is quite a lot that is going on in the country that led up to 1450, which is about where we're going to start. As you can see here, 1450 is roughly 100 years after the fall of Rome. Rome was the largest empire in the world up to this point, and so you can see that it's shrinking right here, the Holy Roman Empire. And there's a lot that's going to go on with these formation of various countries. And it is these countries primarily on the western coast, England, France, Castile, Aragon, Portugal. Those are the countries that are going to explore westward to the Western Hemisphere. In 1492, we have 4 superpowers that are on the rise. 2 of them are England and France, as you can see here. Here's England. Oops. Here's France right here. And both of these are distant cousins to each other. And so they're fighting continuously for thousands of years. And so they're still in this struggle with each other. But Spain is doing really well. It has various regions, Navarre, Castile, Aragon, and Granada. And what is happening here is they are dealing with a situation where they're at the end of a long period where something big was happening. In 632, with the death of Muhammad, he's the founder of Islam, there was this widespread idea to go out and spread the idea of Islam. So Muslims are going to go all over. And one of the places they're going to do is they're going to come across from the North African continent into the bottom part of Spain, and they're going to march northward. As they do this, they're going to take area after area after area. So from 711 to 732, Tariq ibn Ziyad, he is going to take over lands. And basically the Iberian Peninsula is going to be controlled, Islamic controlled for a very long time. Portugal is quietly watching from their corner of Europe, not really doing much of anything. So over time, this Muslim influence is going to take control of what will become Spain. It's not Spain yet. It's just a different grouping of areas throughout the whole thing. So you have this setup in 1450 of England. Kind of how did they get here? Because there's 2 important things that's going to lead to exploration here. And the first one is the end of the feudal system. What the feudal system is, you have your king at the top. Almost everyone knows this, king at the top. And then you have your nobles in the middle. And then you have your peasantry in the bottom. So religion is the very center core of society. Illiteracy is huge. Generally, 90% of the public cannot read. They require, those who can read have a lot of money. So nobles or the king, or they're part of the clergy. And they can read Latin, but there's not a lot of documents written in Spanish that are out there, or French or English. And so you have this centralized power that is grown out of this idea of divine right, that God has appointed all these monarchs, and therefore these monarchs can do whatever they want. And because these monarchs can do whatever they want, only God can punish them if they do something wrong. So there is this ideology for feudalism that is there. The church is the most powerful landowner in Europe. They control almost 50% of the lands that aren't connected to a country. Another 25% of lands that are behest of a monarch has given it to them. So about 75% of the land owned in Europe itself is owned by the church. When I say the church, I mean the Catholic Church. Low-income peasantry turned to religion for support between 1100 and the 1300s, primarily because life was just bleak. There is no hope. So they need something to latch onto that will give them hope, that will give them faith that something is better out there than just their horrible, awful life that they're in. So they're going to turn to the church. They're going to turn to religion to help with that, to give them hope. Feudalism is going to come to an end due to three main things. One, the Crusades. There's going to be a situation within the Crusades that's going to lead to westward exploration. The plague is going to wipe out a lot of people, and so we have this rise of the merchant class during the Crusades that's going to grow and grow and grow until we get to the 1400s. At the end of the 1400s, Christopher Columbus is part of the merchant class, and it is that merchant class that's going to want to explore westward. So we're just going to look at a couple things real quick, and then we'll be done with this section. So the Crusades, the church begins the practice of selling indulgences. This is going to be very important for later in the 1500s. An indulgence is the ability to pay the Catholic Church to forgive your sin. And in the beginning, it was used during the Crusades. Nobles who did not want to go to Jerusalem themselves, they could buy an indulgence, which at that time was you bought the ability to not go and to appoint someone else in your place. And then anything that, as long as that person was on the crusade for you, all of your sins would be forgiven as soon as they reached Jerusalem. 1 in 4 men from Western Europe are going to die as they travel through the Crusades. There are 6 crusades in all. The church absolves all the sins of everyone who goes. It begins with the Crusades itself. We have the beginning of the middle class. There are some peasantry that are out there, and they decide away from their monarch. They see all of these individuals traveling through Europe on their way to Jerusalem. So what they're going to do is there are these skilled people, blacksmith, tanners, bakers, all those jobs you're doing for your paper. They're going to set themselves up. And any money that they make via these little booths that they have along these travel routes, that's theirs to keep. And so that's going to rise them up above the peasantry and create that middle class. And that middle class, that's the class that's going to want to get out of Europe and explore and to go to the Americas. So other than the Crusades, we have the plague. The plague is going to wipe out 1/3 of the population of Europe. It is also known as the Black Death, the bubonic plague. It came from China on ships that were bound for Italy. As you can see with the percentages here, China's going to lose half their population, Africa 13%, England loses 1/3, Italy loses 75% of their population due to the plague. Poland shut off their borders, so only about 5% of those who in Poland died due to the plague. It leads to the end of the feudal system. Peasantry make up about 75% of the population in Europe, and they're going to be hit the hardest. Half of all peasant children are going to die in adolescence with the death of adults in this. So the feudalism system just falls apart. It goes from being a pyramid to a diamond shape, and if you don't have enough workers at the bottom that support the upper part, it fails. And so feudalism is going to fall apart. And this is going to lead to turmoil in England and other countries. England itself, you have the 100 Years' War after the plague, 1337 to 1453. And there will be this war between France and England. And it's going to keep England out of exploration for a while. And so Spain, Portugal, and France, they're going to be the big ones in the beginning. Also in England, from 1455 to 1485, we have the War of the Roses. So once England gets its ability to be away from France, it has this internal civil war of, okay, now that we're independent, who's going to rule us? So there's 2 competing families. They're going to come together and they're going to fight politically as well as actual fighting itself. And so that's going to keep them out of exploration for a while because England has to figure out its own stuff so they know what they can do. So out of all of this, after the plague and everything, we have the rise of the merchant class. So this is where your Ninja Turtles are going to come from. Leonardo, Michelangelo, Raphael, Donatello. These are great painters during the Renaissance. The Renaissance is going to be a change within the thought patterns of those within Europe. So it's going to pull us out of the Dark Ages, out of the Middle Ages, and into this new situation where people are starting to learn to read. People are going to start to learn about the world around them. It's not just this little 5-mile circle. You know, there's more than this to life. And so this new middle class is going to form up banks. They're going to, so your bankers, your merchants, investors. So they have these extra money, so they're going to invest in other people. Skilled tradesmen can expand what they have. And so they're no longer beholden to just a monarch. By 1450, public land control is going to change. The Catholic Church no longer has the money or the people to support them to control all that land. So it's going to shrink to about 50%. The noble class owns about 25% of land. So between the Catholic Church and the noble class, that's about 13 people who control 75% of all the land in Western Europe. But a new class, the new merchant class, is going to come up, and they're going to get another 25% of that land, and they're going to do really, really well. And it is that merchant class that's going to explore westward. So now we're going to move on to presentation 2.2.